Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.
We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal,
that they are endowed by their Creator
for certain unalienable rights,
that among those are life,
liberty,
and the pursuit of happiness.
I think that racism in this country is permanent. To say racism is permanent rather than being a despairing statement can be an uplifting statement.
We have spent about $3 trillion in the past 25 years on programs to aid the poor. Obviously, spending more on traditional poverty programs will not result in a decline in poverty.
Everybody's totally happy and satisfied, totally content. If we don't find somebody with an edge, I'm going to go crazy because I'm not satisfied and I'm not content, and I do think things still need to be changed.
A lot of people said that I was a communist and that our educational system was one of the best in the world and all that. Well, it probably is to them, but not to us.
If we truly believe that all men or all women and all men are created equal, then I think the real question is, how is that equality created? What is the meaning of that equality?
The first thing that comes to mind is freedom. I mean, being able to do anything you want to do.
I think that's so stupid. They've never had a Jewish, have they ever black?
They had, I think
or
they have
a
a
woman
black
president. That really ticks me off.
Yeah.
I think more or less today that a lot of people expect special treatment. And I don't think that's what anybody meant by equality.
You gotta have this, the money.
All men are created equal? Absolutely not.
Nothing has managed to so divide and confound us as a nation as the ideal of equality. We all believe in equality in theory, but we're profoundly divided on how to achieve it.
Over here we have some very fashionable apartment houses. Over there is a very swanky nightclub. While down here, men starve for want of a job. How does that strike your sense of humor?
What's all this leading to?
Tommy, there's a very peculiar mental process called thinking. You wouldn't know much about that, but when I was living here, I did a lot of it. One thing I discovered was that the only difference between a derelict and a man is a job.
We passed civil rights legislation, but now the next step in the civil rights revolution is to bring economic empowerment, ownership, entrepreneurship, give people a chance to get a stake in the system so they too can be part of this capitalistic economy. And until we do that, we are not going to complete the revolution that started not just when Dr. King or Rosa Parks led it in the 50s and 60s, but that goes back to the inalienable rights of all men and women everywhere to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and the right to private property.
Jesse Jackson doesn't get it. Neither do the mayors who marched on Washington demanding more funds for the cities. The answer to the LA riots is a clear one. and one that is being voiced with astounding unity by citizens at the grassroots. Don't send us social programs, send us capital.
Welcome Bob Woodson, my friend and entrepreneurial activist.
My name is Bob Woodson. I have fought for equality my entire adult life. I was active in the civil rights movement and now promote economic empowerment. I've come to believe that the greatest obstacle to equality is government itself. We have spent about $3 trillion in the past 25 years on programs to aid the poor. That money could buy the assets of every Fortune 500 company with enough left over to purchase all the nation's farmland. And yet, even in the face of these tremendous expenditures, there are more poor people today than when the war on poverty began. So obviously, spending more on traditional poverty programs will not result in a decline in poverty. What we must therefore do is provide the means for people to provide for themselves. It was Dr. Martin Luther King who said, what good does it do for a person to have the right to eat at a lunch counter or to move in a neighborhood of their choice if they don't have the economic means to exercise that right? And thus, there are millions of people who are locked out of the American economy because of the rules and regulations that bar them from participating as full citizens. It happens everywhere. Here in Washington, one good example is our street vendors. For years, street vending has been the first step into the American economy for low-income people. A vending stand is a small business, and so vendors in Washington, D.C. are really operating in that spirit of American enterprise by attempting, in their own modest way, to support their families by vending on the streets.
Your merchandise license will cost you $106.
Yeah.
You have a tax registration, $1,000.
However, recently, City Council and the mayor passed a rule that would increase that license fee over 1,000% to $1,500. As a consequence, thousands of low-income blacks, Hispanics, and others could be forced out of business. Why is the city preventing these grassroots entrepreneurs from earning a decent living?
If you can't pay well, then you get it, but I can't pay, so I'm fighting. I'm willing to fight.
They're squeezing us out, you know. To me, the only redress is legal redress. You know, we've got licenses to work, but the city is squeezing us, and they're letting the business people squeeze us out. They don't understand, you know, like the hardships of even at this level running a business. And I think the only way that we are going to become empowered is if we empower ourselves. And we've done a good job of it. Nobody gave us the streets.
Who's staying? License. Monday morning, where you got the licenses, go back down there and pick up another license, because this license just has street vendor. It should have class B, it should have central zone. Okay? You understand? Okay.
A police officer has complete control over the opening and closing of a vendor stand. That is too much power to have over a businessman's business. We can find no other classes of business where police have that type of power. I went to trial two and a half.
Even during a time of slavery, Sundays was the traditional day off for slaves. But throughout that time, slave owners permitted slaves to grow vegetables and fruits, and they were permitted on Sunday to come into the marketplace of Washington, D.C. and sell these fruits and vegetables. And with these proceeds, many slaves were able to purchase their freedom. It is the absolute irony of ironies that today, with a city council dominated by blacks, the nation's capital permits fewer economic liberties to present-day vendors than slaveholders did in the 1840s and 50s.
This stand looks like it's in violation. We're going to measure it.
So another warning, sir?
No, ma'am.
Oh, man, why?
I have to treat everybody the same, right? We have to be fair and impartial. Isn't that correct?
Please, and just forgive me, sir.
And this is a typical case of David and Goliath, how government, with the urging of large business, are trying to squeeze out the small entrepreneur, which excites a kind of intense competition that has implications for racial tensions that exist. The social consequences of continuation of this scenario are absolutely devastating.
And you know that to be the truth. You don't know. You don't know how. And I really don't appreciate what you did. I really don't appreciate what you did.
So when you have private industry and you have the government officials putting hardworking, decent folk who are saying, we want to help ourselves instead of looking for a government handout. When you have these people eliminating the self-help tendency in folk, I think that's a tragedy, a great tragedy.
I'm saying these things can be changed because they are really fundamental liberties as an American citizen. I mean, it's fine to talk about this stuff with flags waving and Marine band playing. There's another thing to talk about the exercise to be self-sufficient when it comes to ability to sell a hot dog. Liberty really breaks down to just that, the fundamental right to sell a hot dog without somebody hassling you. And if we really mean it when we say that all people are created equal, then we cannot allow a situation to continue that keeps some Americans dependent on government programs and prevents them from using their own initiative to join, as equals, this nation's economy.
Yes, guys. It's a wonderful day.
I remember once back in 1970, of course the women's movement was late coming to Texas, most progress is. There was a very elegant dinner party in Westlake Hills, which is a fancy section of Austin. And our friend Tony Corioth was there. Tony's a labor lawyer. He's a good guy, but a dreadful sexist. And he got to talking about how driving home from work that night, he'd seen a young lady on the street with the most remarkable set of jugs he, Tony Corioth, had ever witnessed in his long years of jug watching. And he described in great detail how they wiggled and jiggled and bounced and jounced. And indeed, the whole sight had been so fascinating to Tony, he drove around the block, took a second gander, and again described to everybody at the table how they wiggled and jiggled and bounced and jounced. And in those years, women had a remarkable social skill, which was the ability to gaze off into the middle distance while pretending not to be there. I'm afraid it's something our daughters are never going to learn. But all the women at the table, being well-bred, were gazing off into the middle distance, pretending not to be there. When Ann Richards suddenly said in clarion tones, "Well, girls, have you seen any good dicks lately?"
Yes, I'd love to. Thanks, Jean. I'll be there. Goodbye. You know, 3 weeks ago, I couldn't have accepted that invitation. Like so many people these days, we live in the suburbs, and Dave needs the car every day for business. When he was gone, I was practically a prisoner in my own home. But that's all changed now. Now I'm free to go anywhere, do anything, see anybody anytime I want to.
Started shooting the pinball and started to lie for a truck driver's job. I qualified. I got the job and started up the road. I got lost on the very first load, but that's truck driving.
I'm a truck driver, sure am. Us women drivers are always put down, you know. Women shouldn't be driving trucks and things. You know, right now that's my big beef, is that, you know, We may not belong out here, but we're going to be out here. I have 2 kids to support, you know. My ex-husband owes me like $5,000 in back child support, which I'll never see. And if the kids are going to grow up, have an education, it's up to me. And whatever it takes for me to do to see them get that education, I'm going to do it. Whether it's driving a truck or shoveling ditches, you know, I'm going to do it. And luckily, I've picked a profession, you know, that I like. It's fun. Not always easy, but it's fun.
You got a honey, you're standing to see me coming, you try to pull out your money, and I sure don't give a toss about the call you drop. With the best 500 at the lower bang of pop. So let me pass without a combo, cause I'm not to it. Your rap is kicking, booming, sister, with no rhythm to it. And I'll be mighty obliged if you just step to the side. A movie start front and butt before I run right through it. You think I'm fresh, oh well, my best you'll never get to hear. And I got money in that bank account also, my dear. So I don't need you hanging around up in my shit.
So where are we? We went through Watkins Glen. Wow, Seneca Falls is almost in near Lake Ontario. All right, so maybe 10 more minutes, I think. Okay.
My name's Bev D'Onofrio. When they asked me to do this essay on women and equality with an all-women crew, I thought it was a great idea.
You should drive towards our next destination.
So, I couldn't believe it when we started off with a disagreement. Should we act macho like men and depend on a map, or ask directions like self-respecting women?
You mean the directions to her house? No.
Oh.
No, the map.
Oh, sorry.
I know where I'm going. Don't you wanna come too?
We're taking a road trip to ask women if they're feeling equal to men these days. I know exactly what they'll say. Sure, things are better than they used to be. But who's fooling who? It's a man's world.
I know my destination.
So those are roof boards from the historic time. There'll be lights
This is
shining
cool.
down.
The engineer supervising the construction of the nation's new historic park was a woman. Karen Wilson tells me that some fed-up women held a convention here in 1848. Abolitionist Elizabeth Cady Stanton gathered hundreds of women here to sign the Declaration of Rights and Sentiments. As radical as the Declaration of Independence itself, this declaration said that all people were created equal, women included. Why did they choose Seneca Falls for this monument to women?
Women were not allowed to speak in public, and the Wesleyan Methodists offered their chapel for people to speak, including women.
That's great. So I'm thinking to myself, please, history, monuments, you put me to sleep.
This was part of the chapel.
But then it hits me. For most of this country's history, women were not allowed to vote. And in the 1800s, if a woman worked, her wages belonged to her husband. In fact, women were the property of their husbands. The law allowed a man to beat his wife whenever he chose. Can you imagine? So how did it happen that you got this job?
They had a program called Minority Introduction to Engineers that I went to at University of Washington. And it was really encouraged in Washington State for both men and women, or boys and girls, I guess, at that age, to become engineers.
It's been my experience, anyway, that women have a rougher time getting the same opportunities in life as men do.
I think I'm treated fairly. I know I'm paid a fair wage for the work I do.
Do you think that the women's movement had anything to do with the opportunities you've been given in your life?
Wow. I hadn't thought about that so far.
Karen Wilson hadn't thought about it? You know, years ago, when I told my mother I planned to go to college, she said, "College? Who's going to pay for it? Take typing. You don't want to end up in a factory like me." I knew my mother was trying to help me better my life. But even then, I would think, well, how come my mother said my brother could go to college? And how come he got piano lessons when I was the one who played the piano every day? And this was all coinciding with the women's movement, and it was like a lifesaver. It was like, my God, yes, yes. I have grown up thinking that I can't do anything, that I can't be a doctor, a lawyer, or anything, that I could never be president. If it weren't for the women's liberation movement in the 70s, I wouldn't be who I am today. Liberty Church. Visitors expected. All right. We saw on the map this town called Liberty, and we thought, what a great name. So we stopped and wondered, can you see changes in what you can expect for your daughters compared to what you expected for yourselves?
My daughters, they all have a profession.
Right.
They can take care of themselves and their children, where in my day we couldn't do it.
We have women working on construction jobs. Some of the women ride those big machines.
Yeah. The girls want to be firemen, okay? So they give the girls the easier jobs. They don't have to haul the hoses, the heavy hoses around. The girls get the easier parts, I think.
I saw far up here when Hall's place burned that the women were using the hoses as much as the men.
They were?
They were, and I was amazed.
Take a shot. There's another female coming.
I'm amazed at who happens to be hauling hoses just down the street.
So, do you do everything the men do?
Yes. They respect me for what I do. They depend on me to save their life the same as I depend on them. There's no difference.
What happens when you go home? Do you split all your chores 50-50?
For the most part. He does the lawn, I do the wash. That's the only thing we don't share.
Do you know when women got the vote?
I'm not up on my history, so.
1920. I mean, I didn't know that either.
But for us, we're young enough where it's just common practice. We don't know what it's like not to have all the rights that we have. So to us, we probably take it for granted.
Everybody's totally happy and satisfied and doesn't feel prejudiced against in their life, doesn't remember ever having that experience, is happily married, most of them, totally content. And I thought, if we don't find somebody with an edge, I'm going to go crazy. I mean, I'm beginning to feel like I'm a total weirdo here because I'm not satisfied and I'm not content, and I do think things still need to be changed.
Maybe it's a difference in expectations. When I was younger, nobody expected much of me. Because I was intelligent and unhappy, I rebelled, and I got pregnant and went out with, like the nightmare of a boyfriend. His brother was in jail. He was a high school dropout, and abortion wasn't legal. I didn't know how to get one illegally, and so I married and was stuck and furious.
More coffee? Are you married?
Nope.
But you have kids?
Oh, yeah. I was married, but I'm not anymore.
Bev's a godsend. Why didn't we think of a single mother before? If anybody's hurting in this country, it's women trying to raise kids on their own.
There you go. I'm really sorry. You sure I can't get you anything else?
45% live below the poverty line.
Well, I got married when I was 17. We were happy for a long time, and then he started drinking. And
how long did that go on before you had enough?
About 5 years.
Oh, God. And so what would it be like? Like what?
Get my head bashed into the wall, choked, kicked, throw it out of the car.
Oh, no. And did anybody ever notice?
Oh, yeah. They'd say, why do you put up with it? And I always said, for the kids. But I would never say that again. Nobody's ever going to hit me again.
Do you think men and women are equal?
Well, yeah. Do I think, I think they should be. I don't think they always are.
How are they not?
Well, because sometimes men get better paying jobs and women get paid more for, you know, the same job that a woman does. You know, it's hard sometimes, but we do it. Be easier if I got child support, but I don't, so we manage.
Did you ever try to go after him for that?
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
Well, it's, you know, I have an order, you know, but he doesn't pay, and it keeps it building and building and building.
Sure, the law says you can't beat your wife now, but if the law's not enforced, then how far have we come? For me, things worked out. I went to college and became a writer. But 10 years ago, my life wasn't all that different from Bev's. I was raising a kid on my own. I wasn't a writer then, I was a typist. The women of my generation grew up with a voice in our heads that told us what we could do.
Well, I'd like to be a secretary for some important executive, but a lot of girls I know are going in for nursing or school teaching.
And what we couldn't.
I think what I like best is civil engineering. I like to get into some branch of aviation, too.
No wonder girls of my generation grew up feeling inferior.
Feel like you're Mrs. Smith Goes to Washington?
No, I feel like I'm a girl in a van driving around the city. I didn't find what I'd expected on this trip. Most of the women I met didn't think things were so bad. Maybe the year of the woman wasn't just the bogus propaganda campaign I'd pegged it for. All right, now what do we do now that we're on North Capitol?
Stop and ask directions.
Okay.
Hey, mister! Can you give us directions? Mister!
Could you tell us the Senate, where the Senate is?
The Senate?
We want to park.
What do you mean
the Senate side of the house.
The Senate side of the House?
Yeah.
There's a Senate side and there's a House side of the Capitol.
Yeah. We decided to go to powerful women, members of Congress.
How did you get here?
Well, I got here despite all odds. Coming from a large family, a very poor family, a father, sugarcane cutter in Puerto Rico.
Do you think that women are given equal opportunities in this country?
We are not being given equal opportunities. Whatever gains we have accomplished have been through a struggle and through fighting the status quo and the system. What really troubles me is that when we discuss women issues, when we discuss daycare center, when we discuss poverty, those are not women issues, those are issues of American society.
Yes, family. I mean, these are our citizens.
Okay, the laws women need to be equal are mostly in place, but our culture hasn't quite caught up. And in this culture, it's easy for a woman to lose self-confidence or have it stolen.
I can certainly give some good examples of it at my advanced age. I couldn't go to medical school. I studied bacteriology. When a doctor got in the elevator, always male, we had to get out.
Even in Congress, I mean, with the exception of a few. I mean, where is all the power in Congress? You look at the front page of the paper and you see the members of Congress, the leadership, are there on this important issue, and they're all men.
That's right. But also we have made enormous progress. I don't want young women discouraged.
But I think it's a shame, and I think it's not really fair to all those brave women who stood up before us and people who chained themselves to the White House fence and everything else, that we don't make them no more bad. If husbands are working more and helping out with the housework, if life is easier for them now, it was made that way by people who made a lot of sacrifices and took a lot of aggravation and criticism to try to make it that way. But I think it's dangerous for us to let people to forget how we got where we are today, because it's so easy to slip back to where we were.
Yeah. The fight for equality has been our history. We need to know it. If we don't remember where we came from, we might forget where we're going. And I don't know about you, but I'm not too crazy about being lost.
My two great heroes among the founding fathers are James Madison and Thomas Jefferson. But if you look at Jefferson career and ideas. I think you see even there, in that extraordinary man, the seeds of the great contradiction that still haunt us today. Yes, it's true that Jefferson tried to convince the other founders of this republic to abolish slavery, but it's also true that Jefferson owned slaves till the day he died. And there it is, that terrible conflict right there from the beginning.
I think it's maybe going a little, the pendulum has swung a little too far, and that some white men are in the minority now.
I believe there's a lot of institutional racism and economic exploitations of certain minority groups.
You know, God created us all equal. Now, some choose to do a little bit different, but we're still equal. And we shouldn't have special rights over another person just because of our color or just because of our race.
I don't dig apple pie, it's an American lie, because I dug between the lines, all I found was swine. Direct control, I won't fold or succumb.
I think privately there is a lot of animosity, and that people still hold their private opinions about people who are different.
I'm Italian, so there were a lot of things that went on when I was a child, mud slinging and those name calling and this kind of thing. Get over it.
Racism is still alive and well. It manifests itself in different ways today than it did, say, 100 years ago when there were Americans still questioning whether Indians were human or whether Indians had souls. It's more subtle today, but it's still very much alive. So I don't think we're anywhere near equality.
You know, in my lifetime, I have seen an extraordinary advance in the equality of people. I'm from the Deep South. I can remember growing up and not really understanding why blacks people were never allowed to come to my front door, you know, and it was just puzzling to me, and it left an impression upon me. And going in the military and traveling around the country, you know, I think I departed from that way of thinking by great strides. But I see my home and the way things are today vastly different than the way they were, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, or 20 years ago for that matter. So we are making progress.
My name is Derek Bell. I'm a lawyer, a law teacher, and an author. I think that racism in this country is permanent, that it has lasted for 300 years, that the patterns of racism, the role it plays in the society, are as evident now as they were then. To say racism is permanent rather than being a despairing statement can be an uplifting statement. It means I don't have to worry about this defeat and this setback. I can recognize miracles that come out of my fighting that I didn't expect. And it seems to me that to get my views, which are not the normal views, which are not the mainstream views, to get people even to listen to those views, story was a good vehicle. Because people love stories, and they will suspend their own beliefs, deeply held though they be, and listen to the stories. Large and diverse and freedom-loving, the country was very rich, very powerful, very proud. Minority racial groups suffered because of racial discrimination practiced by many in the majority, who themselves were often disadvantaged when they lacked the privileges of upper-class status. Women too suffered because of deeply embedded practices of patriarchy. On the anniversary of the nation's birth, for example, banners espousing equality were everywhere. Politicians openly proclaimed what was obviously not true. That in all the land there existed no barriers to advancement, that here all who would could rise based solely on merit. Well, few dissented from these equality proclamations, and those who did were dismissed as unpatriotic cynics. Then the wondrous young woman appeared in the land. Somehow and appropriately, her features reflected a most felicitous blending of all the country's peoples. Her long hair was the texture of silk. Her complexion was a luminous golden brown, and she accepted food and shelter with those in whose midst she would suddenly appear. She claimed no family, and when asked her name, she replied simply, "I am equality's child." The child would appear at the front door of an individual or a family who, captivated by the child's beauty and charm, invited her to visit. She would accept for a few days, never more than a week. After she left, her host or host family would begin acting in ways quite the contrary to their normal behavior. Those previously not known for charitable impulses, for example, began giving large sums to the poor, quite often to the embarrassment and chagrin of their friends and associates. And some who had abided, yes, and even practiced racial or gender discrimination, became outspoken advocates of justice for all. I think a few examples will explain the phenomenal transformations. There was the young accountant, ambitious and able. The accountant was known as Mr. Prudent because he weighed every action, indeed his every step, to make the right impression, to avoid giving offense. But several days after a visit by Equality's child, it happened. The accountant's neighbor, longtime friend, was regaling the country club dinner party, recounting how he had to utilize all manner of deceit to avoid selling his house to the highest bidder, a black family. Well, the prudent accountant calmly got up and publicly denounced his neighbor's bigotry and those who applauded the deed. He located the rejected black couple, convinced them to file a discrimination complaint, and testified against his neighbor, who was held liable for substantial money damages. Well, within a month, the accountant had been hounded out of his exclusive neighborhood. His job, while not in jeopardy, was no longer the sure stepping stone to an executive position that it had been. Though he was an outcast in his community, the accountant was undismayed. "I was simply carrying out the country's espoused principle of equality for all." A school teacher refused to summarily assign troublesome black youth to a special education class. Instead, she organized the community to challenge the school's assignment policies. She was denied promotion and faces disciplinary action. Like the ostracized accountant, though, none of those who acted against bias and injustice and then suffered for their deeds were upset by the retaliatory actions taken against them. But the public in general was upset. They were disturbed, a disturbance much aggravated by the revelation on a national television show that each of the individuals had been visited and embraced by Equality's child. At first quietly, and then under public pressure, law enforcement agencies launched a nationwide search for the child. She was, they said, wanted for questioning. That search was intensified when it was discovered that those embraced by the child became, as the media put it, equality active, able to pass on their passion for equality by embracing others. Those embraced by the child, and many suspected of having been embraced, were placed in a quarantine at a remote, heavily guarded site. That action, supported by the courts, was deemed necessary to prevent the spread of the equality affliction. The nation's highest court agreed. Its most liberal members joined in the opinion. They observed sadly that a nation's most dangerous citizens are evidently those who seek to implement rather than simply espouse the country's most cherished ideals. The young girl appeared. She had eluded the most diligent efforts to find her, and on-site security guards rushed toward her, but the court's Chief Justice stood, ordered the guards back to their places, and said to the girl, "You're welcome here, young lady. We are prepared to hear what you would tell us." Those who suffer discrimination because of race, class, or gender bias, they know full well the cause of their oppression. But with no alternative save violent revolt, most continue to view equality as an ideal, one that from time to time can be used as a shield against the worst abuses. And, she added, true equality can never be realized in a nation whose peoples view wealth and status as goals more important than justice and equality, and where the laws themselves are designed to protect vested wealth. Young lady, the Chief Justice interrupted, if you believe what you just said, that true equality is impossible, then why do you influence individuals to risk so much in order to bring about an ideal of justice you maintain can never be achieved? The impossible is merely another name for challenge, the girl replied. Those who commit themselves to real equality will find personal triumph even as they suffer public defeat. Your equality crusade engenders hatreds and confusion in the land, another justice responded. Those committed to justice for others do not expect it for themselves. But your equality crusade is doomed to failure. You understand that, the Chief Justice warned. Do you, Mr. Chief Justice, do you really believe that those you hold in confinement, that they have failed? Each of them have overcome their fears, spoken out for equality in the very face of society's demands for conformity. Oh, they are physically imprisoned, yes, but their souls are free. And you, young lady, who are you? The Chief Justice asked. I am like those in prison. I will tell you what they will tell you. Each of us is equality's child.
Just a few months ago, we had a demonstration by the Ku Klux Klan on the occasion of Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. The Klan was upset because the state of Texas now recognizes that as a holiday. So they were fixing to have a protest about it, and turned out there weren't enough Klan members right here around the Capitol to get up a good demonstration, so they had to bus them in from Waco. And they arrived in their hoods and their robes and were greeted, I'm proud to say, by 5,000 people of Austin who mooned them as they marched. It was really quite festive. Steve Fromholtz, a country western singer, was the guy who thought up the idea. A bunch of mischief makers sitting at a bar down here decided to carry it out and get people signed up for it, and they're heroes. There's a kind of illusion that, you know, you're born in this country and your inalienable birthright is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that it's all been one long, broad, smooth path of progress ever onward and upward toward greater liberty and justice for all. Well, as I've talked about, it hasn't been. It's really been rough and rocky, and sometimes freedom loses and gets rolled back.
Now go here to the 7. Then I bring it over?
Demetrio Rodriguez was a sheet metal worker in San Antonio, Texas, who had an absolutely revolutionary thought. He thought it's how both rich people and poor people pay taxes, that poor kids should get just as good an education as rich kids. Imagine. And so he filed a lawsuit and fought that battle all the way up to the United States Supreme Court.
My name is Demetrio Rodriguez. I'm a retired civil service worker. I've been fighting for equal education for the last 25 years. 25 years is a long time to wait. 25 years is a long time for every child that has graduated from here, where we don't have the facilities, books, and a lot of things that they need, basic things.
En el año 68, Demetrio Rodríguez decía, mejores escuelas en Edgewood, ¿ya cuántos años todavía? Hay que pelearle a los ricos, porque es injusto tener escuelas tan pobres para nuestros hijos. Parents of our poor schools, veterans and patriots among them, take it for no one's fools, cry equality and freedom. Ya se juntaron Demetrio y los...
When I was a little boy, I remember I went to pick cotton in West Texas, and we couldn't even buy a hamburger. We couldn't use the restrooms because we're Mexicans, you know. We were trying to look for work. We're not trying to steal, or we're out there, you know, to do vandalism or anything. We were just working people. And I saw all those things, and when I saw all these things, when I came back in the service, I said, well, I have to do something. I have to join an organization, learn more about our cause. This is Carlos over there with the green shirt. He's my hard-working son. He's the one that's got all the money. And this is Patricia, the brain in the family. She's the youngest one. In 1968, when my son Alex started going to school, it was at the Edgewood Elementary School. That school was in very bad shape. The place was falling down.
You know, they want us to go into this so-called hellhole, you know, and try to learn something without passing out. You know, it was so hot sometimes.
When I was in junior high, we went to the band. I remember we used to walk in the band, and it was just flooded. We would get our shoes wet. We had our instruments. We had to pick it up at least 3 feet high, so our instruments wouldn't get wet.
You realize how much you were deprived, and I was deprived. I was deprived.
They said that all men are created equal. See, a lot of those things are beautiful, but it's only a myth, and it's only a thing to say to make it look good for this country, that sure, we have a lot of liberties. Sure, we have a lot of things that we don't have other countries. But we're not perfect. And we're not going to be perfect as long as you have greedy and selfish people. Poor schools were getting less monies than the rich schools. So we went ahead and filed a suit. We've been a victim of discrimination for so many years. I think this is a good chance for me to do something.
Gentlemen, please listen well. What's a Chicano to do? To fight for the children, the future of my people too.
It went through the federal courts, and we won. Then it was appealed to the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court made the ruling that we didn't have no right to education.
In their appeal shared no cause. The Supreme Court left them grinning. The children of Edgewood lost.
The conditions at Edgewood High School are terrible. They were worse than that in '68, but they're still in bad shape.
If you go into a poor school and you look at a science lab, you'll see leaky faucets, you'll see empty shelves. If you go to another side of town, you'll see brand new, clean labs with reference material, microscopes. It's like night and day.
In Texas, you have schools that have Olympic-sized swimming pools, gyms, better teachers.
It all ties into one thing, that it has to be fair. It has to be fair. It has to be funded fair. Why should somebody else have it when you don't? Yeah.
quarter-century battle to equalize public school funding in Texas may reach a climax on Saturday. That's when voters go to the polls, and they'll vote on an amendment to redistribute about $400 million from richer school districts to poorer ones. The courtroom battle began here in San Antonio 25 years ago.
Right now, I'm working for the election on May the 1st on 3 amendments that's going to help us to bring about equal funding for the school districts all over Texas. For Amendment 1 and 3 for the future of the Texas children. Right. These amendments are not perfect, but we're glad to get something so we can get on with the business of educating our children.
I've always wondered why my dad never gave up. I mean, you would think that after so many rejections of no, 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 a person would get tired. I know I would. And he, you know, has yet managed not to say I quit. And I mean, I just think the sooner this thing gets resolved, the better it'll be for everybody. Because like we said earlier, you know, eventually it's going to come around again, and it's going to affect not just us, the city or the state. I mean, it's going to affect the whole nation if we don't get something done.
Mr. Rodriguez, why is everybody here today?
Because they're going to say goodbye to last B-52. And of course, some of these people did a lot of work on it, and someone just loaf around it. Like
you?
My friend over there.
How about you? Did you work on it?
Oh yeah, I worked hard.
How many years?
34 years. We got a right under this country, and I think we Mexican Americans have earned it. Because if there's anybody that's been faithful to this country, we have. Dallas and telling the people the conditions of the schools that we have, our schools over here, and because of this election that we have May the 1st, we learned about the amendments, about Amendment 1. If we really believe in that, we should make a stand and ask that we receive that justice that we deserve. But I still believe that we have a great country here, that we can function if we get ourselves together and believe on those words in the Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome to KSAT 12 News Tonight, our special election edition.
The 3 propositions to equalize Texas public school funding appear to have gone down in crushing defeat, sending state legislators.
There's quite a gathering of people here, including Demetrio Rodriguez, who has led this fight for 25 years. You were involved in the original lawsuit, and this is what it was supposed to come to, an equalization of funding, but it appears tonight that the people of Texas still don't want that. Are you very disappointed about this?
Yes, I'm very disappointed that the people didn't support this plan, and after all the hard work we put in it, I think we should have won.
After Proposition 1 goes down, and it appears certainly that people in the Edgewood School District are not happy about that. Back to you, Chris. Thank you, sir, very much. Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, guys.
Even though people are against us, I know that one of these days I might not get to see it. We're going to get our school funding, and we're going to have schools just as good as the ones they got in the other district, because we don't want nothing less or nothing more than what the other people are getting.
If you got the dinero, I got my Camaro. Just flash some cash, buy some gas, off we'll go.
Our country is an unusual country. It's very much in the throes of growing up, and we are very much looking in the mirror and attempting to recognize our own face. And we keep asking, is this who we are?
I think the women's ahead of the men.
I'm not a feminist. I'm not in any way a feminist. I'm feminine, and I am a liberated lady.
So the whole thing is very complicated. I wish that everybody in the country could come and sit down in a cooler tub on a cooler day, and you can't break bread in here because the filter will get all messed up, but we should sit and talk.
Because I think one day we're all going to be a mixture one flavor. There's no such thing as a Chinese or Japanese or a white person or Indian or a black person. We're all going to be together and we're all going to be beige color. Then what are we going to be prejudiced about?
So those of us who like to fight for freedom, of course, always have to keep a sharp eye out. But it's my opinion you also have to keep your ability to laugh. Because for one thing, you don't always win. And having fun while you're fighting might get to be as much fun as you're going to get to have.
There's no there's nothing. I mean, they treat people like, they don't, it's no equality, I'm telling you.
Because it's not whether how good you are, it's like how well you know somebody. And that's not fair, because if somebody better than another person doesn't know anybody, then the other person will get it because they know somebody in a high position. That's not fair.
It's on who you know and what you know. Well, it's not really what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
Funding for this program was provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.